Welcome to the Self. Welcome to the Living Wisdom YouTube channel. As you know, this is our self-knowledge series, and we're discussing the Bhagavad Gita as the keynote of Vedic wisdom. So we're going into this discussion of the Bhagavad Gita in more detail in this episode. So in order to begin, I'd like to read you a little bit from the introduction of Maharshi's commentary on the Bhagavad Gita. And we're using this as our textbook to go into the knowledge of the Bhagavad Gita as the essence of the Vedic literature, which imparts the most profound knowledge of the self. This is from the introduction. The Bhagavad Gita is the light of life, lit by God at the altar of man to save humanity from the darkness of ignorance and suffering. It is a scripture which outlives time and can be acknowledged as indispensable to the life of any man in any age. It is the encyclopedia of life, and this commentary provides an index to it. There will always be confusion and chaos in the relative fields of life, and man's mind will always fall into error and indecision. The Bhagavad Gita is a complete guide to practical life. It will always be there to rescue man in any situation. It is like an anchor for the ship of life, sailing on the turbulent waves of time. It brings fulfillment to the life of the individual. When society accepts it, social well-being and security will result, and when the world hears it, world peace will be permanent. So this is a great promise of the Bhagavad Gita. When the world accepts it, world peace will be permanent. And now we want to go into this knowledge more deeply. We know that Arjuna is on the battlefield of Kurukshetra, and Kurukshetra represents the very battlefield of life. Relative life, or life in the world, is always characterized by conflicts of opposing forces, such as the conflict between the heart and the mind, the conflict between pleasure and pain, between gain and loss, between right and wrong, and suffering arises from a lack of coordination or a lack of balance between the mind and the heart. Maharshi says, he says it very clearly. He says, within man there is mind and there is heart. These, by their very existence as two, hold the possibility of suffering. When they are united, when there is harmony between a heart and mind full of righteousness and noble inspiration, suffering cannot arise. But when there is a lack of coordination or a conflict between them, suffering automatically results. Arjuna's grief is born of the basic difference between the heart and the mind. And in the Upanishads it says, Dvitiya dve bhayam bhavati. Certainly fear is born of duality. Whenever and wherever there is a sense of two, fear or suffering can arise. And we've seen that in verse 1, Arjuna is faced with the terrible dilemma that he's facing his relatives just in the army opposite to him, and he has to wage a battle against his teachers, his relatives, his grandfathers, uncles, maternal uncles, grandsons, and many friends, and he just becomes completely possessed by compassion. And he speaks these words on the battlefield. He says, "My limbs fail and my mouth is parched. My body quivers and my hair stands on end. Gandiva, the bow, slips from my hand, and even my skin burns all over. I am unable to stand, and my mind seems to whirl. And I see adverse omens, O Keshava, Lord Krishna, nor can I see good from killing my kinsmen in battle. I desire not victory, O Krishna, nor a kingdom, nor pleasures. Of what avail will a kingdom be to us, or enjoyments, or even life, O Govinda? Those for whose sake we desire a kingdom, enjoyments, and comforts are here on the battlefield, having resigned their lives and riches. Teachers, uncles, sons, and likewise grandfathers, maternal uncles, fathers-in-law, grandsons, brothers-in-law, and other kinsmen. O Madhusudana, Lord Krishna, these I do not wish to kill, though killed myself, even for the sake of sovereignty of the three worlds, how much less for this world. What happiness could come to us from slaying the sons of Dhritarashtra, O Janardana, Lord Krishna? Only sin would come upon us through killing these aggressors. Therefore, it would not be right for us to kill the sons of Dhritarashtra, our own kinsmen. How should we be happy after killing our own people, O Madhava? Although their minds clouded by greed, they see no wrong in bringing destruction to the family, and no sin in treachery to friends. The age-old family dharmas are lost in the destruction of a family. Its dharma lost, adharma overtakes the entire family. When adharma prevails, O Krishna, the women of the family become corrupt, and with the corruption of women, O Varshnaya, intermixture of castes arises. The intermixture leads only to hell, both for the family and its destroyers. Their forefathers fall as well when the offerings of the Pindodika cease. Through the wrongs done by the destroyers of the family in causing the intermixing of castes, the immemorial dharmas of caste and family become extinct. Men whose family dharmas have lapsed, so we have heard, O Janardana, Lord Krishna, necessarily live in hell. Alas, we are resolved to commit great sin in that we are prepared to slay our kinsmen out of greed for the pleasures of a kingdom. It were better for me if the sons of Dhritarashtra, weapons in hand, should slay me, unresisting and unarmed in battle. Sanjaya said, having spoken thus at the time of battle, casting away arrow and bow, Arjuna sat down on the seat of the chariot, his mind overwhelmed with sorrow. And so we see in this chapter, in chapter 1, Arjuna's mind is completely overcome with sorrow. He cannot reconcile the conflict between his mind and his heart. As a warrior who's dedicated to removing the evil in society, his duty is to slay the evildoers, even though they're his cousins. But his heart will not allow him to do it. So there's a great conflict between his mind and his heart, and that's why he's in a great state of suffering. And as we know in chapter 2, this is called the soul of the Bhagavad Gita. Lord Krishna reveals to Arjuna the knowledge of the self, the knowledge of Brahma Vidya. And as I spoke these verses out in our last meeting, I'm just going to say again the four most important verses in chapter 2, the most important knowledge of the self, which is given out in chapter 2. This is called Brahma Vidya, the knowledge of the self. I'll read those four verses. Verses 12 to 15 are the most important verses, which display that knowledge of the self, the knowledge of one's inner being, the knowledge of that unified wholeness of life itself. And this starts with verse 12. verses 12 to 15 give the essential knowledge of the self. Verse 12, there never was a time when I was not, nor you, nor these rulers of men, nor will there ever be a time when all of us shall cease to be. As the dweller in this body passes into childhood, youth, and age, so also does he pass into another body. This does not bewilder the wise. Contacts of the senses with their objects, O son of Kunti, give rise to the experience of cold and heat, pleasure and pain. Transient, they come and go. Bear them patiently, O Bharata. Verse 15. That man indeed, whom these contacts do not disturb, who is even-minded in pleasure and pain, steadfast, he is fit for immortality, O best of men. And Maharishi says that these 4 chapters give the essence of Sankhya, the principles of self-knowledge. And after this, Lord Krishna, in this same chapter, which is called the soul of the Bhagavad Gita, gives Arjuna the knowledge of yoga, the knowledge of how to become established in that unshakable state of self-knowledge, that transcendental state of pure consciousness. First Lord Krishna imparts to Arjuna the principles of self-knowledge, and then he imparts the very technique of self-knowledge. And there are 4 very important verses that we are going to now listen to. And these 4 verses are the knowledge of yoga, which Lord Krishna gives to Arjuna, so that he may become firmly established in the self and transcend the field of duality and reach that state of unshakable inner equanimity. And now I'll read those 4 verses to you, which gives the essence of yoga, the technique of becoming established in the self. Verse 45 to 48 of chapter 2. The Veda's concern is with the 3 gunas. Be without the 3 gunas, O Arjuna, freed from duality, ever firm in purity, independent of possessions, possessed of the self. 46. To the enlightened Brahmin, all the Vedas are of no more use than is a small well in a place flooded with water on every side. 47. You have control over action alone, never over its fruits. Live not for the fruits of action, nor attach yourself to inaction. And verse 48. Established in yoga, O winner of wealth, perform actions having abandoned attachment and having become balanced in success and failure, for balance of mind is called yoga. So these 4 verses gives the essence of yoga, and the other 4 verses give the essence of Sankhya, the essence of self, the principles of self-knowledge, and these 4 verses give the essence of yoga. And now I'd like to just read some of the commentary Maharishi gives on these 4 verses. The first verse is the first commentary is on verse 45, which I've just read. The Veda's concern is with the 3 gunas. Be without the 3 gunas, O Arjuna. And this is be without the 3 gunas. Maharishi says, Lord Krishna commands Arjuna, be without the 3 gunas, be without activity, be yourself, This is resolute consciousness, the state of absolute being, which is the ultimate cause of all causes. This state of consciousness brings harmony to the whole field of cause and effect and glorifies all life. Arjuna's main problem was to reconcile love of kinsmen with the necessity to root out evil. He was desperately seeking a formula of compromise between righteousness and evil. But on any plane of relative life, these are irreconcilable. That is why, having explored all the avenues of his heart and mind, Arjuna could not find any practical solution, could not decide on any line of action. Lord Krishna, however, shows him the field where righteousness and love merge in eternal harmony, the eternal life of absolute being. So this is the teaching that Arjuna has to transcend the field of conflict and arrive at the state of the absolute pure being, arrive at that state which is beyond the conflicting elements of heat and cold, pleasure and pain, gain and loss, and all the other pairs of opposites which constitute life. Because under the influence of the conflicting opposites, life is always tossed about like a ship on the rough sea. Maharishi says to be freed from duality is to be in the field of non-duality, the absolute state of being. This provides smoothness and security to life in the relative field. It is like an anchor to the ship of life in the ocean of the three gunas. One gains steadiness and comfort. As far as the three gunas are concerned, these are the three forces of nature, which the force of creativity, maintenance, and destruction. And these three forces are always involved in every activity in nature, that interplay of creative force, the maintaining force, and the destructive force. So to be without the three gunas means to be beyond the field of relative life, to be stationed in the unchanging field, the immortal field of eternal being, that state of transcendental consciousness or pure consciousness. So this is the knowledge which is given to Arjuna in this chapter 2. And Maharishi says, here is a technique that enables every man to come to the great treasure house within himself, and so rise above all sorrows and uncertainties in life. From this verse onwards, the entire teaching of the Bhagavad Gita proclaims the glory of achieving the state of the transcendent. It is this transcendental state of being which enables a man to become a karma yogi, one who is successful on the path of action. It is this that enables a man to become a bhakta, one who is successful on the path of devotion. And it is this that enables a man to become a jnani, one who is successful on the path of knowledge. This is the highway to the fulfillment of life's purpose. So this is what I wanted to share with you today, that this knowledge contained in chapter 2 of the Bhagavad Gita, Maharishi says it's the seed ideas of the entire Bhagavad Gita. And all the other chapters, from 1 to chapter 18, those chapters are the body of the Bhagavad Gita. And in this chapter 2, Lord Krishna has given Arjuna the knowledge of Sankhya and the knowledge of Yoga. And in our next episode, we will discuss that all the qualities, the signs of one who is established in the self. Arjuna questions Lord Krishna, and he says, what are the signs of someone who is fully established in the self, in self-knowledge? And Lord Krishna gives Arjuna all the signs of one who is firmly established in the state of the resolute intellect. And this is what we'll be discussing in the next episode in our self-knowledge series. So thank you so much for coming, and I look forward to sharing more and more knowledge of the Vedic literature with you in the coming episodes.